Oh. Now, this is the start of episode 0 where I go through the backstory. Here we go. I'm also continuing to download the game. I'll go over my pre-order woes in episode 1. Cold Steel. This is the start of everything. In the year 1204, there's a military academy in Erebonia called Doors. Class 7 is a new class in Doors that apparently demonstrate aptitude with the Arcus, a new battle ornament. Ornaments are basically the way you do magic in this game. Green Schwarzer is the main character of this entire arc. Alicia is essentially the canon love interest. And there's Elliot Craig, Laura Arcade, my personal Class 7 waifu, Machias, Emma, many people's waifu, not mine, but many. Eustace. Fee. Holy shit, she looked that young in 1? I'm so used to her more mature appearance in 2 and 3. She looks like she's 12. Even though she's 15. Damn. Gaius, who's fucking awesome. And the instructor. My personal non-Class 7 waifu. For obvious reasons. Man, the graphics really have improved since Cold Steel 1, I have to say. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but in essence, trying to figure out the best way to phrase this. In Cold Steel 1, you get introduced to everyone from Class 7, you forge your bonds together, you figure out bits and pieces of things going on behind the scenes, and basically you get more and more of each character's backstories throughout it all. Main character, game's protagonist, and member of the original Class 7, Reen, is the adopted son of Baron Schwarzer, the ruling lord of Ymir in northern Erebonia. He's an intermediate-level practitioner of the Eastern School of Swordsmanship, 8 Leaves, 1 Blade. He has a strange power sleeping within him, but he has not ever managed to control it. He is the Awakener of Valimar the Ashen Knight. More about him later. Essentially, they use his power and the ability of the Awakener and everyone from Thors to stop a civil war in Erebonia. However, the fallout from that civil war causes a bunch of different things, such as the annexation of the middle sort of free city of Crossbell, which then leads to tensions with the large nation of Calvard to the east. After that, he becomes an instructor at a branch campus of the same campus that he was enrolled in. There we go. And then all these other characters are all very important as well. The old Class 7 of Alicia Reinford, she's the daughter of the chairwoman of the Reinford Group, which is essentially the heavy weapons manufacturer of the continent of Erebonia. And at the end of the previous game, she leads one of their development divisions. Elliot Craig is the son of General Craig of the Imperial Army's 4th Armored Division, which is considered to be the most elite fighting force of the Empire of Erebonia. Laura Arcade is the daughter of Viscount Arcade, who is the Count of a small town of Legram. He's also known as the Radiant Blade Master and considered by most people the most skilled swordsman in the entire Empire. Although there are a couple of other people in the Empire who challenge him for that title. Machias is the son of the Imperial Governor. The Imperial Governor is essentially the mayor of the Empire's capital of Heimdall. He's also a commoner, and he opposes the nobility, which still has ruling power. I'm going to skip Emma for now, because she's a lot more important. Eustace Alberea is one of the nobles. He's the son of one of the heads of the 4 great houses of Erebonia. And the 4 great houses are essentially the leaders of the nobility, the dukes. Because it goes dukes, counts, barons, and knights in that order, I believe. And knights are hardly ever even talked about. But he's the son of one of the leaders of the Civil War, who is now in prison, and he now rules over the land as the acting duke. While his older brother is the governor of the annexed Crossbell. Now, on to Emma. She's a witch, plain and simple. Witches use magic without using battle ornaments. Everyone else uses battle ornaments, which use orbs in a specialized machine. She has a familiar, which is a cat that can talk, and basically she's deeply intertwined into the entire story. I don't want to spoil it because she'll probably get a lot more character development in this game considering just how important she is. Fee Clausel is essentially a child soldier, a former Jaeger. Jaegers are essentially mercenaries for hire, except they do whatever their employer says. Like, they will legitimately cause civil wars for the right price. And she was essentially raised on the battlefield as an orphan by the leader of one of the biggest Jaeger corps in the entire world. Until he died in a battle with his fiercest rival, and their entire Jaeger corps sort of just dissolved. She joins Class 7 as a way to just kind of find out what the hell she's doing with her life, and she grows to find it almost as much as his family, if not more so, than when she was a Jaeger. The leader of that Jaeger corps eventually is found to actually be alive, and now she's trying to get answers as to how he's alive, why he's alive, and, how he fits into this grand web of intricate plots. Gaius Warzel is from a northern highland area called Nord. Now, there's a lot of history with Nord, dating back very far back into the Erebonian Empire, and basically these people, they still believe in the same religion that everyone else does, but they also worship the wind because it blesses them. It's kind of hard to describe, but you can almost refer to them as almost like the Native American culture of this particular game series. It's a deeply spiritual culture, and they value their family and their land extremely highly. And by the end of Cold Steel 3, it's discovered that Gaius is actually also part of the Septian Church as a secret order of knights called the Gralsritter. Anyone who has played Trails in the Sky will know the Gralsritter because one of them, I think Father Graham, was a key figure in the second chapter. Basically, what happens is he goes back home to Nord. Calvert, the nation to the east, tries to break through the northern highlands of Nord because it's technically a independent country, but protected by the Empire, so it wouldn't cause a war. And while he's fighting to protect his family, the person who taught him everything he knew, a traveling priest by the name of Father Barkhorn, protects him and dies for him, and reveals that he's actually a Gralsritter, and he makes Gaius a Gralsritter in his place, essentially. And so Gaius is not only doing everything he can for his homeland, his second homeland of Erebonia, where Class 7's from, Class 7, his second family, but now he's also working on behalf of the Church. And the Church is a gigantic organization in this game. Then Milliam Orion. Oh boy, Milliam. She is hilarious. She is a member of a group called the Ironbloods, and they were formed by the Imperial Chancellor Gileath Osborne as essentially Basically what he does is he takes gifted, troubled children with horrible pasts and basically molds them. That's what he does. Is the best way I can describe it. To hear the Ironbloods talk to you about it, they'd say he saved them from themselves or some other bullshit, or saved them from their lives or whatever. But basically what he does is he takes children, specifically 4 of them, with deeply troubled pasts and incredible skills, and then molds them into essentially brainwashed, like, thugs. Not thugs, but... And Milliam is one of those, except, she's not a normal human. She's incredibly easy to like, but she's also very careless. And she has... Basically, she was created, and she has no idea what emotions are. And her emotional development goes through Cold Steel 1 and Cold Steel 2 until Cold Steel 3, she's essentially a normal human. Which is incredible because she was artificially created. And at the end of Cold Steel 3, stuff happens. And it's probably going to get shown in a few... it's probably going to get shown in a few flashbacks, so I'm not gonna... Oh boy. Now, these are all pretty important people, but I have to preface it by saying the entire backstory of this is basically revolving around the Divine Knight of Valimar. And the story behind that is essentially there were 2 great powers. The goddess Adios of this world gifts artifacts to mankind, and there were 7 total. And one of those artifacts was actually the central point of the not the Crossbell Arc. Actually, I think the Crossbell Arc. No, the Crossbell Arc was an artificial artifact. But the Liberal Arc, the Trails in the Sky, all revolved around one of Adios' holy artifacts, one of the 7 Septarian, is what they're called. And in Erebonia, there were 2 Septarian, one of Earth and Fire. And the people basically formed cultures around it. The Septarian granted their wishes, much like the Aurorale, I think it's pronounced, from Liberal. And eventually the 2 sides wanted each other dead, so the 2 Septarian began to fight, and they essentially destroyed the entire land. And eventually they killed each other, but their spirits then merged into one being that couldn't be controlled. And the witches of that time, the Hexen Clan, and another group called the Gnomes, who are very important, another group called the Gnomes assist the Hexen Clan in essentially splitting that force's spirit, not spirit, physical form into 7 and forming them into the Divine Knights. The spirit itself is not in the world, but they couldn't split it, so they had to expel it from the world. So Valimar, Reen Sworger's Ashen Knight, is one of those 7 pieces of the Septarian of Steel. But Sarah Valestein was the original instructor of Class 7, former Jaeger. She turned into an instructor. She turned into a bracer first, and then an instructor. Regarded as being attractive so long she keeps her mouth shut, while I happen to think she's hilarious. She lives a very slovenly lifestyle, drinking beer at all hours of the day. But the thing is, she hardly ever actually gets drunk. She's, immune to becoming drunk. For the most part. There are, I think, 2 people in the entire world that she knows can drink her under the table. She was raised in the province of Northumbria and joined the Northern Jaegers when she was young, because in Northumbria, Jaegers were essentially the only way they could earn any money. Because of a disaster in Northumbria, they couldn't actually grow their own food. So essentially what you did was you became a Jaeger, you went out and fight, and you brought home money for food, and you were seen as a hero. But something happened, and she eventually left her home and left her job as a Jaeger and became a bracer, where essentially she earned less money, but she felt better doing it. But then, at the same time that she became a bracer, she also found Fee Clausel from Class 7 and basically told her, hey, join Class 7. It should be a good way for you to sort of make up what you lost with your Jaeger band disappearing. Eventually, Erebonia invades Northumbria, and in order to protect civilians, she joins the Empire to try to protect as many civilians as possible. And this is between Cold Steel 2 and 3. And then when that all happens, she returns to her life as a bracer, but in Erebonia, bracers are basically vigilantes. They can't be arrested, but they aren't legally sanctioned. Whereas in other countries, they're legally sanctioned and even have their own headquarters. So, Angelica is a hilarious person. She doesn't... Tex doesn't do her justice. She was a year above Reen at Thor's, and essentially, the best way I can describe Angelica if you're reading this, imagine the most perverted old man stereotypical in anime you've ever seen. That's Angelica. Except she doesn't drink. Just take the classic anime stereotype of a perverted old man who will hit on any woman he sees, and that's Angelica. And she's hilarious about it. And the best part is she's classy about it, too. She's also trained in Eastern martial arts, specifically unarmed combat, and she also knows how to pilot this game's mechs, essentially. I had to skip that last part. You can pause it if you want, but it was a very heavy spoiler. I'm also not going to touch on George. He was Angelica and Instructor Toa's friend in Class 7. He became an engineer and toured the continent. He helped out Class 7 a bunch. Story stuff happens, blah, blah, blah. Patrick Hyams is one of my favorite, sub-characters, because in Cold Steel 1, he was a royal dick. Literally, he was a royal pain in the ass. He was the epitome of a stuck-up noble who had no idea when to keep his own fucking mouth shut. However, over the course of him thoroughly getting beaten down by the commoners of Class 7 and this minor noble who he looks down on, he eventually comes to respect and trust Class 7. And, one thing I never would have expected, he winds up becoming one of Reen Schwarzer's closest friends after their initial interactions become one of extreme, their initial reactions were basically extremely bitter. Reen tried to be friendly and Patrick wasn't having it. Basically, he was an immature little dick. Yeah, Patrick turns into a pretty damn cool bro. And I really hope he gets off. I really hope they do right by him in this game. Thomas Lystandard is a fantastic character, mostly because you don't see it coming. He's kind of like the airhead history teacher in the first game, who, most people just, they kind of just ignore him. But then in Cold Steel 2, it turns out he's actually one of the most powerful beings in the entire fucking world. He is the second in command of the Gralsritter, essentially the second most powerful Holy Knight in the entire Septian Church. He's called the Partitioner, and he essentially wants the Black Records, which are a secret set of records depicting the Empire of Erebonia's true history, without any embellishments or any propaganda. It's really cool, honestly. He quits his job and basically wanders the land trying to find clues about the Black Records while Reen teaches. And the best part is Reen winds up teaching history, which was Thomas's subject, which is pretty cool. Nightheart, I'm not going to get into him too much because honestly, I find him to be a little shallow. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Imperial Army's 4th Armored Division, subordinate to General Craig. Powerful soldier, skilled in a tank, more skilled in a mech. He was a teacher at Thor's in the first year, joined the army again in the second year. He started in the army in the third game, but he was called back to become an instructor at Thor's main campus by order of the prince himself, the prince of the entire empire. And at the end of Cold Steel 3, he rejoins the army again because of story reasons. But Nightheart's pretty cool, he's a bro, but he's basically your stereotypical army dude, bro. Also, hi Valimar, this is what Reen's mech looks like. He's fucking awesome. I still don't know what Arge generally equivocates to in feet or meters, but Arge and Silge are this game's way of determining length, and I still have no idea Anyway, he's 7 arch tall, which probably equates to about 10 feet tall, would be my guess. Maybe even more, maybe more like 14 feet tall. I have a hard time judging height. He's intelligent, he has his own will and memories. He remembers previous awakeners. Because of the bond he shares with his awakener, if he has enough mana stored in him, he can warp large distances. It's really cool. The previous awakener for him was Emperor Dreichels, who is a pretty key figure in all this. He was the leader of the Empire during 250 years ago, during its massive civil war, where there was like a power struggle where 4 princes were vying for the throne. And I've already went over all these guys. I went through those guys. The branch campus members are from Cold Steel 3, and I should probably pay more attention to them. Una Crawford is the first one you meet. She's, you know, every single anime game needs the stereotypical pink-haired girl. She's pretty cool, though. If you're familiar with the crossbow arc, you'll notice the weapon she uses is the same as Lloyd's. It's because she essentially looks up to Lloyd and the rest of the special support section. That game's cast as her heroes. And I think that game took place like 4 years prior, and she's 17 now, so she was like a teen when the special support sections, like an early teen, when they started doing their shit. She has a strong sense of justice, she's energetic. There were some complications with her in Crossbell where she lost her academic credits. She was essentially forced to transfer to the Empire that annexed her home. So the Empire annexed her home, and then because of that, she lost her academic credits, and in order to continue her education, she had to transfer to the main military academy of the place that annexed her home, so. And lo and behold, the person who's teaching her is Reen, the Ashen Chevalier, the hero of the Empire, and the one who showed up not during the occupation. Reen showed up after the occupation to protect Crossbell from the Republic of Calvard, who then invaded because they were both, Calvard and the Empire both wanted Crossbell. It's a massive city. It's a city of trade. Lots of money flows through there. Essentially the ideal target, but they had so much money and power for such a small city that neither side could actually invade. So when the Empire eventually annexed it without much of a fight, Calvard tried to literally invade to take it by force, and what Reen did was essentially protect Crossbell. But obviously she sees Reen as sort of the symbol of the Empire that took away everything she held dear. Sorry about that. She, however, begins to grow to enjoy Erebonia and the people who she meets here. She winds up becoming sort of like a driving force, would be my best bet. Like, she's not as smart as some of the other members, or as strong, but she has probably the biggest will and drive among them all. And one of her goals is to make the people of the Empire and Crossbell essentially come to see each other as friends, because she knows that it's either the Empire of Erebonia is going to, you know, keep her home forever, or it's going to be fought after for centuries by Calvard and destroyed. So then there's Kurt Vander. The Vanders are a big name in Erebonia because they, up until Cold Steel 3, they protected the Imperial family. They were the designated protectors of the Imperial family. His stepbrother, I believe, or half-brother, I can't remember which one it is, Mueller Vander is Prince Olivert's main protector, and he was a big character in Trails in the Sky, and he's a fantastic character. God, I can't wait to see Prince Olivert in this game. I have no idea how he's going to be in this game, considering how events transpired in Cold Steel 3, but it'll be interesting. So essentially, the Vanders are renowned swordsmen. Like, their fighting style is known throughout the Empire. The Vander and Arcade schools of swordsmanship are the two massive ones in the Empire. There are other schools that are practiced, but the Vander school is the biggest one. He's the youngest. He's also, because how to say this politely, he's kind of like an offshoot, is the best way I can describe it. The other Vanders were all sired by the same mother, but then I can't remember if it was an affair or the wife died in childbirth at some point, but his mother is different from the rest of his family, and because of that, not only is his hair different, but he also has a slimmer physique than most of his family. So unlike his entire family who all wield broadswords, he wields dual swords because he has the finesse for it. Sorry. He was actually childhood friends with the prince, but now he and the prince's relationship was deeply strained. And at the beginning, Kurt was rather disdainful of Reen's swordsmanship because at first he couldn't really tell how much Reen was holding himself back, but he didn't see Reen's skills with a sword as anything to boast about, and he thought he could beat him pretty easily, but it became apparent pretty quickly that Reen was holding back in Cold Steel 3 because of various reasons. And over the course of Cold Steel 3, Kurt begins to really look up to and admire Reen as a swordsman and as a teacher, and sort of regard him, I'd almost say, like, as an older brotherly figure, in a way. Altina, if you think she looks familiar, it's probably because she looks a little like Milliam. She is also an artificial being. And in Cold Steel 3, she's almost as robotic at the beginning as Milliam was in Cold Steel 1. Unlike Milliam, though, she makes her progress toward having more emotional depth in one game, in 1 year, whereas Milliam, it took 3 or 4 years, not 3 years, to actually develop the range of emotion she has. And again, there's a lot of story behind her, and she doesn't really consider Milliam her sister, but Milliam definitely considers herself Altina's sister. Then there's Muse Egret, the resident temptress of the group. She is, as one of the other members of Class 7 calls her, a harpy. But essentially she's an extremely, I'd say, flighty young woman. She likes to make very suggestive comments toward her instructor and other people as well. However, it seems like every single time she does it, she's doing it for a specific reason. And over the course of Cold Steel 3, it becomes more apparent that every single word she says, she's planned. But she can make it sound so natural. Like, every single time she flirts with Reen, keep in mind he is 4 years older than her and her teacher, so he constantly pushes her away. Every single time she flirts with him, it sounds so natural. But it also sounds like she kind of wants to string him along. She wants to string everyone along. She wants to display a personality. So there are definitely parts of her that most of Class 7 don't know. However, one thing that they should have been able to piece together, given that her family history was kind of public info, her name is Muse Egret, but her name is also Mildine de Cayenne. Duke Cayenne was the leader of the Noble Alliance during the Civil War of the Four Great Houses. Muse Egret was the name given to her when her grandfather, Count not Eugene, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Egret, and he named her Muse. However, Muse's father named her Mildine, and Muse's father was Duke Cayenne's brother. So she is actually the heir to the Cayenne Duchy? Yeah, Duchy. And let's just say she, it's a meme to say 5D chess, but her predictions are 5D chess. Like, she seems to know everything that's going on. Even if she doesn't know everything's going on, she knows everything's going on. So it's not like she has the information, but she can connect dots that no one else can see. Oh, didn't mean to click her again. Ash Carbide is the last member of the new Class 7. He's your resident dickhead that cares. He's an ass. He doesn't make any illusions. He's an underage drinker. He beats the shit out of people. He likes loose women. But there's a reason for everything. He doesn't beat the shit out of just anyone. He beats the shit out of assholes. Like, this is a guy who, as a kid, frequently kicked bullies' asses. He would hunt down thieves. During the Civil War, he actually made a group of like-minded individuals that all just hunted down thieves around his hometown. Well, his adoptive hometown. So, basically, he projects a sort of, get the fuck out of my way, I'm a jackass, don't get near me feel, but when he actually gives a shit about something, he gives a shit. They don't know about his kind of past. He is an orphan from a town called Hamel, just like Joshua Bright, who is one of the main characters of Trails in the Sky. Ugh. Yeah. Louvet? I can't remember Louvet's last name, but he was essentially Joshua's sort of foster brother. And Joshua Bright were thought to be the only two survivors of the tragedy of Hamel, which deserves its own thing. But Ash was also a survivor. However, during that massacre, he had been implanted with the seed of a curse without anyone really knowing. And it wasn't anything anyone did, it was just sort of a thing that happens because of the way the story's going. But basically, the curse manifested itself and essentially forced him to attempt to assassinate the Emperor, which caused all the big shit that happened at the end of Cold Steel 3. Toa Herschel, she is Angelica and George's friend who I mentioned. She was the student council president in Cold Steel 1. She was the captain of the Courageous during the Civil War in Cold Steel 2, and she became an instructor in Cold Steel 3. She's incredibly intelligent and organized, and she goes out of her way to help everyone, even if she winds up getting like 3 hours of sleep for it. And somehow she never seems to be upset about how much work she's doing. If you played Trails in the Sky, you know Tita. Tita was a 12-year-old girl in Trails in the Sky, and she's a prodigy of a mechanic. During the Liberal incident, she helped Oliver, Agate, Estelle, and Joshua find a resolution to the whole flying city sucking orbital energy out of everyone thing. Pretty much everyone didn't want her to enroll in Thor's because it was so far away. There was one person who did, and I'm wondering if she's going to make an appearance. The person who wanted her to enroll in Thor's was Renee. If you've played the Sky series, you know that Renee was an Ouroboros enforcer. Ouroboros is kind of like the big shadowy group in the scenes, and the enforcers are like the big powerful guys that are technically under the command of the leaders of Ouroboros, but they kind of can do their own thing. Essentially, one of the tenets of the of Ouroboros is that everyone does what they want of their free will. If they don't want to help with the plan, they don't have to, but it's definitely recommended they do. And Renee was an enforcer, but she was a child, and she was kind of, sort of, I want to say, taken advantage of by the leader of the Ouroboros known as the Faceless. He didn't technically brainwash her, kind of like what he did to Joshua, but he did take advantage of her past. And Renee, in Sky 1, she was a psycho. In Sky 2, she was a psycho that began to thaw. So the fact that she became as good of a friend to Tita as to actually recommend for her to pursue her dream is pretty incredible, and I kind of want to see how much Renee has grown. Randolph Orlando is actually from the Crossbell arc. He became a teacher at Thor's, and I'm not entirely sure why. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure why Randolph, he said it was a recommendation, but the way he makes it sound, it was like becoming a teacher at Thor's was forced on him. Oh, yes. He was essentially forced to become a teacher at Thor, so he could not be in Crossbell. Basically the place he found to be his home. He could not be in Crossbell while the Empire was there because the Empire is trying to solidify its hold, and they don't want anyone from the SSS sort of pushing for Crossbell's independence. General Aurelia Le Guin, the principal of Thor's branch from Cold Steel 3, she's a fucking badass. Think Olivier Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, except with silver hair instead of blonde. She is widely considered to be the second most powerful swordsman on the entire continent. In Cold Steel 3, she actually surpasses the Radiant Blade Master, which is Laura's father. Granted, Laura's father is not at 100% during this section, but she still beat him in one-on-one combat, which makes her the most powerful swordsman basically in the world. She is nothing short of a badass, although I'm wondering how she fits into the fucking story. I'm gonna leave Irving and Schmidt, they're a little bit minor characters. Basically, Irving is the commander of the branch campus. Like, when they go on field exercises, he's the one who leads them. And Schmidt is the engineer. This guy basically has Tita under his wing as, like, an apprentice. And he also taught a few other people. He was one of the disciples of Professor Epstein, who essentially created orbments. It essentially moved the world away from a mechanical age into an orbment age. Like, before Professor Epstein, steam power was still a thing, coal was still a thing, steam power and tanks and all that. But this guy's teacher basically turned everything into orbital energy, and he's basically continuing it. Is there anyone else I want to make sure I talk about here? A lot of these people. Agate is Tita's protector and big brother figure / semi-romantic interest. It's kind of weird because Tita's barely 17 in this game and Agate's like 25, I think. But like, Tita's got a fixation on Agate because essentially he protected her during the whole Liberal arc, and was one of the people that basically told Estelle, Joshua, and the others to stop treating her like a kid, let her make her own damn decisions. He comes off as brash and rude, but unlike Ash, he doesn't like come off as brash and rude and like a womanizer. He's just sort of like, he's like one of those people, when he does something nice and someone mentions it, he'll tell you, oh, shut the fuck up already, I did something nice, go to hell. But he does it all the time. Like, he keeps doing nice shit for people. Toval is another bracer. He's one of Sarah's friends. He's known as one of the best arts users in the entire world. Arts are basically magic you use with orbments, and he's so skilled with arts, he gives natural magic users a run for their money, which is weird because like, natural magic is a lot more powerful than arts. Tio is another member of the special support section. She's also an engineer, and she has sort of like a she has like a sensory power, but she augments it with like special headgear and stuff. One thing I forgot to mention about Reen is he has like the ability to perceive the presence of people around him. At first I thought it was just, his training in his sword style, like the 8 leaves, 1 blade training style of sword stiffs. But apparently it's like an innate skill, and Tio's is more powerful than his, and she augments it. She also happens to have a mech, which is pretty damn cool, and she's skilled with arts as well. I already went over Viscount Arcade. I've gone over Celine a little bit, because Celine is Emma's familiar, talking cat. Essentially, Celine is like a focal point for Emma's power. Without Celine, Emma can only use a little bit of her own power. All witches have familiars that they focus their power through. Crimson Roselia is a kind of a big deal. She's the elder of the clan of witches. She's essentially the grandmother of the clan. She's also 800 years old. That chick is 800 years old. She chose that appearance, by the way. She's a vampire, but she's also a human witch. yeah, there's a bunch of story behind Roselia. What else? Now, it says Claire Revelt is an ally here. I'm not entirely sure about that, to be honest. She's another member of the Ironbloods, and she's blessed with, I think, an enhanced perception. Basically, she can see all the probabilities of a situation in an instant. Which, like, you know, on a battlefield, obviously, if you pull out your pistol and take a shot at a wall, you know the probability that pistol shot will ricochet off a wall to your target. That's basically her. And, you know, she's a looker. If it were not for events in Cold Steel 3, she would have been my non-Class 7 waifu, but that still goes to Sarah. But yeah, basically, I'll go over Claire's situation as it shows up in the game, but I'm disappointed with how Claire's character is turning out so far, honestly. I'm hoping she redeems herself a little. Sharon Kruger. The resident sexy maid who will literally slice you into pieces before you even know what hit you. She was a maid for the Reinford family and assigned to Class 7 by Elisa's mother to essentially care for them. And she grows to... I think she grows to love Class 7 as though they're her own family, but I'm not entirely sure because she has her own circumstances. Yeah, the Ouroboros' enforcers, it says right here, are granted absolute freedom. Alright, so it doesn't tell me anything, it doesn't give me a hint as to how Sharon's gonna behave, because essentially the leader of the gnomes in the Black Workshop is someone important, and once his identity was revealed, Sharon's contract with Elisa's mother expired, meaning she's no longer bound to the Reinford family. But I thought she grew to love the family anyway. So she winds up fighting you at the end of Cold Steel 3, essentially. Let's see, key figures, suspicious figures. Who are these? So a bunch of people there. Key figures. Okay. So allies, Olivert, Elfin, and Elise. Olivert, Rice, Arnor. He's amazing. He's my favorite character, by far. He's hilarious, he's charming, he's reliable, dependable, unpredictable. You name it, you name a JRPG trope, and he fits it and fits it well, and his voice actor is perfect. His voice actor is literal fucking perfection. Like, seriously, Oliver is probably my favorite character in the entire series, whether in the Sky or Cold Steel. He's the eldest son of Emperor Eugen III, but he was born out of wedlock to a commoner, so he is not in line to succeed the throne. His mother died very early, and when he was adopted, he was announced as the Emperor's son, but he is technically illegitimate. And when his father married, like, into nobility, because he had to, like, his father desperately wanted to marry Prince Olivert's mother, but she didn't want to become empress. She just wanted to be a normal person. And he waited for her and waited for her and waited for her, and then she died in, I think, a fire? I had to figure out, It doesn't say here how his mother died. But essentially, when his father remarried into nobility, it took a while, but he eventually came to see Empress Priscilla as his stepmother and loved her as a mother. And then when she gave birth to the twins, Cedric and Alfin, he was over the fucking moon. Like, this guy is the epitome of a doting brother. Yeah, he was, that's a big spoiler. Hopefully you didn't read that, and that's probably gonna get shown back. Whew. But yeah, he is, he's the one who founded, Class 7 in the first place, so... And then Princess Alphen, known as a national treasure. Yeah, she's not quite like Muse, where she flirts with Reen to make up appearances. She flirts with Reen because she loves everyone's reactions. She is best friends with Reen's sister, Elise. She's also a pretty damn wise princess for her age, but she has very little ability in combat besides casting arts. I really hope in this game she has a little bit more backbone, because she faints like 3 times in Cold Steel 3 at different sites. Granted, one of those sites is the fact of her father bleeding on the floor after being shot. I think most princesses would faint at that. But she faints like 2 other times. So, it puts her in a weak light that she doesn't deserve, is what I'll say. Yeah, her family is in a bit of trouble at the moment. Her brother Cedric's turned into a dick. Her brother's missing. Her father is still in critical condition. Yeah, Elise Schwarzer is Reen's sister via adoption, and it's a bit of it's a point of teasing for Class 7, Muse, and Alphen. And Reen's a bit dense about it and doesn't seem to realize Elise is actually in love with him. Like, straight up. But he doesn't make things any better because he has got the biggest fucking protective brother-sister complex in the world. Like, not even the nicest guy in the world is good enough for Elise, in his opinion. And because this is still a feudal society, any suitor for Elise has to go through him first. And just the mention of someone being interested in her usually results in him giving them a death glare. So, it's pretty funny, but at the same time, his overprotectiveness kind of blinds him to the fact that she kind of doesn't want anyone but him. She eventually becomes the student council president at the most prestigious all-girls school in the entire continent, despite the fact that she is simply the daughter of a baron. And yeah, now that things have happened in the story, she probably can't just stay at school. Things are picking up. The thing about Elise is she seems to realize she's never gonna have Reen, because he sees her as a precious sibling. Basically, Reen's whole thing with Elise is she accepted him when he had no idea who the hell he even was when he was an infant. He was adopted, and she accepted him right away. And when they were 6, they were out in, like, playing in the highlands of Ymir. And I can't remember whether they were attacked by a thief or they were attacked by a wild animal, but the power inside Reen sort of exploded out from him and he protected Elise. And he didn't calm down until Elise sort of hugged it out of him, essentially. And when he had no idea what it was, when he thought he was nothing more than a monster, she just refused to let him see himself as a monster. And the fact that she essentially humanized him when he was a kid, he will always love and protect her as a sister, but she kind of wants more than that. Hooray for family dramas in video games. Now, key figures, at least 2 of these guys are, should be under suspicious figures. Most notably, this douchebag, Gileath Osborne, the Chancellor. He's essentially the mastermind of every single political scheme and all the events culminating at the end of Cold Steel 3. He's the one who founded the Iron Bloods, and he's the one essentially plunging the world into World War. Rufus Alberea is his right hand, also the governor of Crossbell. He fought with the Noble Alliance during the Civil War, only to get high up in there and then destroy the Noble Alliance from within. And he was the one who personally oversaw the annexation of Crossbell. Also, keep in mind, Eustace was under the impression that he was not the biological son of his father, and that Rufus was. And at the end of Cold Steel 3, Rufus basically tells Eustace, yeah, it was the opposite the entire time. We just led you to believe that you were actually a bastard. Basically, Duke Alberea accepted Rufus as the heir without him being his actual father. Lecter is another member of the Ironbloods. I have no idea about him. He essentially has the ability to have a perfect gut feeling about things. It's almost like he instantaneously realizes a probability. Like, the best example of it is in Cold Steel 3, you have to go to the Heimdall race courses, which is horse racing. And in horse racing, the odds of picking the trifecta are almost zero, which means you pick the number 1, 2, and 3 horses to finish. And he manages to pick the trifecta while they're watching. Like, he instantaneously has gut feelings about things that, like, it's so hard to explain, but, like, in a moment, he'll suddenly realize something. But he won't know it for sure. It'll be a gut feeling. It's like that gut feeling you have when you know something's wrong but you can't prove it. It's like that for him, but, like, times 1,000. Unfortunately for him, Lecter's father was one of the people that masterminded the massacre of Hamel. He views his father as trash. His father wasn't a bad person. He was just a minor noble in the army looking to get some land. And he feels like the court-martial and execution his father got was justified. However, it's important to note that I think each of the Ironbloods has their own agenda, and I think they're slowly not becoming the brainwashed servants of Gileath Osborne. That's what Emperor Nugent looks like, by the way. He got shot at the end of the last game, if you couldn't tell. That's the Imperial Governor Machias' father. And that's Elisa's mom. Yeah, Elisa's mom's hot. Let's just say that. Unfortunately, she's the Tony Stark of this game, except without the cool suit. She's Tony Stark in Iron Man 1 before he gets blown up. Except I don't know if she's doing it for pure profit or because she thinks the world will be safer when she creates weapons of mass destruction that can be deployed at any point in the country because they are on railroad tracks and they have caterpillar treads. Olaf Craig is Elliot's dad, the leader of the 4th Armored Division. I've mentioned him a couple times. Wallace Bardius is Principal Le Guin, General Le Guin's right hand. He's known as the Black Whirlwind and is known as the most advanced spear user on the continent. And the first person I'm going to show you here is McBurn. And the reason for that is he's probably the most singular dangerous enforcer Ouroboros has. Wallace Bardius managed to hold him off. And when you see McBurn in this game, you'll understand what a big challenge that is. There's only 2 people I know of that have successfully fought McBurn and lived to tell of it that weren't part of Ouroboros, and that's the Radiant Blade Master and Wallace Bardius, where he was actually going at full power. The only other 2 people I know of that fought him at full power and didn't die were Ouroboros' second Anguis, the Steel Maiden, and one of the enforcers of Ouroboros, Luve the Blade Lord. Ugh. His fire can turn to anything to ash, and he has a flaming demon sword from the underworld. However, if he ever loses interest in a fight, he just dips. Meaning that if he's on a mission for Ouroboros that they need, and he loses interest, that mission will just end in failure. And that's what he looks like when he's the Blazing Demon. Yeah. And Wall's party has managed to hold that guy off, so, yeah, that'll be fun when I eventually have to fight him in Cold Steel 4. Campanella, Enforcer 0, the Fool. Campanella, if you know what the Fool is, you'll know what the Fool is if you play Persona. The Fool is the arcana in tarot cards that symbolizes the journey. And very often they're a chaotic neutral figure. Whereas in, like, Persona, you typically wind up becoming a chaotic good or lawful not lawful evil, like a neutral or chaotic good would be the way I would describe someone like Joker from Persona 5. Campanella, as far as I can tell, is a chaotic evil. And a lot about Campanella is shrouded in mystery. He's definitely not a boy. I mean, he's definitely not a young boy. He was a central figure in Trails in the Sky. Well, technically, he said he was just a messenger. You also have to fight him a couple times in Cold Steel 3. He's a skilled arch user. He managed to manipulate spirits and mana. I have no idea what, like, Campanella's, like, main motivations are, because every Enforcer is free to just say no. But very often he's grandly and proudly declared himself as the messenger of the Grandmaster of Ouroboros, who is, like, above all the Anguisses. And, like, I don't know what his deal is, whether he's just blindly devoted to the Grandmaster's plan, or if he just loves the journey and likes seeing chaos. I don't know what Campanella's deal is. Shirley, the Sanguine Ogre. She dresses like a punk, and she's a fucking psycho. But not in the way Renee was a psycho, where she just wanted everything around her to hurt. She just wants to fight everything, fuck everything. She's also Randolph's cousin. She's bloodthirsty, she finds pleasure on the battlefield, she enjoys essentially taunting people, she enjoys a good fight. Yeah, I mean, she's pretty cool, but she's also an evil psycho that happens to also be one of Ouroboros' enforcers. As well, she's also the leader of the second biggest Jaeger Corps in the entire continent, so. Aryan Road, the Steel Maiden. Among the highest executives of Ouroboros, she is the most skilled lance user to have ever lived, one of the most skilled warriors to ever live. She fought alongside Emperor Dreikels during the War of the Lions 250 years ago. Her right-hand man, was a man named Arsaid, who happened to then make the descendants that eventually became the Radiant Blade Master and Laura from Class 7. Eventually, she was defeated for the first time in her life by another opponent, Aurelio Le Guin. She was actually Leanne Sandlot, who was Emperor Dreikel's companion, lover, during the War of the Lions. Good friends with Emperor Dreikels. I don't know why she wants this great Twilight to appear, but it's clear that she has a real reason for it, and I'm trying to figure that out. Duvalie the Swift is Aryan Road's right hand. She's the leader of the Stahlritter, which is a group of knights that serves Aryan Road. She's also as strong as most enforcers. She is technically a member of Ouroboros, but her devotion is to her lord. She also happens to think of Laura as a rival. Yeah, and at the end of Cold Steel 3, she begins to doubt what the hell is going on. Also, there's something that happens at the end of Cold Steel 3 that makes her question whether or not Ouroboros can act with honor. So, yeah. I don't know for certain, but I can see her being an ally in this game. Ines and Enea are essentially Duvley's right and left hands. Enea is essentially a Viking. She wields a giant axe, and she only cares, as far as I know, she only cares about powerful and honorable foes. It's a halberd, not an axe. Aeneas is a bow wielder. They are undyingly loyal to the Steel Maiden. And they have done literally everything together. And yeah, I was noticing signs at the end of Cold Steel 3 that perhaps Ines, Enea, and Duvley might start splitting apart, because it's clear that Duvley is not exactly a fan of what's going on. Also, you know how I mentioned Emma Milstein, the member of Class 7, and Crimson Roselia, the head of the witches? Beta Clotilde is also one of the granddaughters of that witch. She is also the radio personality Misty of Abentime, which is a radio show that most people in Class 7 like, even after they find out she's a witch who has essentially duped them. She was one of the people that orchestrated the events at the end of Cold Steel 1 that resulted in the attempted assassination of the Chancellor, and ultimately led to the Civil War. She then vanished at the end of the Civil War and then started making waves again during Cold Steel 3. Her true intentions are not well known, but she is an Anguis of Ouroboros, but she and Ouroboros had a bit of a falling out. She's still loyal to their Grandmaster, but the other Anguis, the other 6 of them, she is kind of opposed to at the moment. Although, I'm just realizing, there should only be 5 other Anguis, because one of them was killed by the Septian Church during Trails in the Sky. Black Albrecht. This is the leader of the gnomes. He's the one working toward, you've seen this a few times, the Great Twilight, which sounds like the end of the world. So this is how it happens. Essentially, I still don't know how this is happening, but basically, Black Albrecht is absolutely loyal to the Chancellor, but I'm sure he's got his own things going on. And now that I'm looking at him, he looks really sad and tired. But apparently, he lived as Elisa's father without knowing that he was the leader of the gnomes. And apparently his memories returned after he had been attacked by Sharon, before Sharon was a maid for the Reinford family. She was an assassin working under Ouroboros. His memories returned during that fight, apparently. Azure Siegfried is a masked man who is essentially a messenger and agent of the gnomes. And, yeah, if there's a member of Class 7 that you thought was going to be here, here it is. This is Crow Armbrust. Crow Armbrust was a late member of Class 7, and it turns out he was also the leader of the Imperial Liberation Front, which is a terrorist group that attempted to assassinate Chancellor Osborne. He was from a place called Jirai, and Chancellor Osborne essentially destroyed his life. And that also led to him becoming an Awakener for a knight, just like Reen. They wound up fighting together during the Civil War. And at the end of the Civil War, they wind up fighting together. But in doing so, he loses his life. But now he's back. And when the Great Twilight was released, all of his memories suddenly returned. Because he had no idea that he was Crow Armbrust. He had faint ideas that he was Crow Armbrust. After he was revived or whatever, I have no idea how that's happening. But at the end of the Great Twilight, his mask breaks, because apparently that happens, and he suddenly remembers everything. So I can only see him being an unwilling or begrudging ally in this game. Also, if you recognize the last name Clausel, Fee's adoptive father. picked her off a battlefield when she was, I think, 7. He was presumed to have died during a battle with the other Jaeger Corps, the Red Constellation. He and the leader of that Jaeger Corps were thought to have killed each other in battle. But yeah, apparently he's now the awakener of the Palatitan Knight, Zector. I don't know how it happened. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with Rutger, because it was very well documented. He was dead, like, he dead. But now he alive. And I was told, Crimson Roselia, the leader of the witches, because the witches know to seek out awakeners, she mentioned that Rutger was not an awakener when he died. And I'm trying to, like, because the other, other 2 people that were dead but revived were awakeners, Crow and Leanne Sandlot. Leanne Sandlot was dead. She died sacrificing herself during the War of the Lions, but now she's alive with her memories. So Leonidas and Zeno were basically brothers to Fee, and they're the right and left hands of Rutger. But once Rutger died, they both just straight up vanished from her life. They were hired by the Noble Alliance during the Civil War, and they were apparently trying to bring Rutger back, and then they appear with him back. And of course, the thing about these guys, Rutger, Leo, and Zeno, they may be mercenaries, they may be hired out to whoever can pay them the most money, but one thing above all else, Fee is their family. Fee Clausel is their family. She is Rutger's daughter. She is Leo and Zeno's little sister. It's actually, when you are playing Cold Steel 2, you actually wind up on an airship with these guys, and they're just kind of talking to you, trying to get you to join them instead. And they mentioned they don't particularly care which side you go for, but you better damn well stay the hell away from Fee. You know, that way. Treat her like a sister, protect her, but don't you dare get any ideas. That was their words to Reen on the airship. So clearly they really care about Fee. So I'm wondering how things are going to pan out with these guys. Sadly, I can only see them dying. That's how it goes with Jaegers. They tend to die tragic deaths. There's also a lot of stuff in the world introduction. The world, the countries, the cities, the organizations, the history. You got the War of the Lions, the Witches of the Gnomes, the Black Records. I touched on all of those. Organizations, Thor's, Rhineford, the Imperial Army, Provincial Armies I didn't get into, RMP, that's where Claire is from. She is one of the higher-ups in the Railway Military Police. She's also in the Intelligence Division, which is what Million is from. The 5 major cities that I mentioned, Heimdall, which is the capital. Bereahard is the main city of the Alberea Dukedom, where Eustace rules over. Ruhr is where Elise is from. It's also where Angelica's from. Sant Ark is in Sutherland. It's where the High Arms family is from. And it's also where Kurt Vander is from. Ordis is the port city where Muse is from. I've mentioned the Empire. The Empire is the northwestern, sort of northwestern continent, country. The Republic of Calvard is the eastern country. If anything, they're slightly larger than the Empire. Liberl is southeast. They border the Empire on their north and the Republic of Calvard on their east. So they're kind of like sandwiched in the bottom left. Principality of Remiferia, I actually don't know where that is. Crossbell is to the right of the Empire, to the east of the Empire, to the west of Calvard, smacked in the middle. They were a free city. And Northumbria was directly north of the Empire, and it's mostly a salted and frozen wasteland at this point. Remiferia, where is Remiferia? Principality located in northwestern Sumeria. So that would be past Jirai, which would be the northernmost center of northernmost area of the Empire after Northumbria. Okay, so Remiferia is essentially the humanitarian faction. There's also a couple places not listed here, which would be Le Mans and Arteria. Le Mans is a small country that is the headquarters of the Bracer Guild, the worldwide headquarters. And Arteria is an independent nation that is essentially this game's papacy. It is the country of the Church of Adios, the Septian Church. There we are. The Septian Church, Bracer Guild, Ouroboros, all that stuff. Am I done? I think I'm done. An hour and a half later, and I have rambled on and on and on about the backstory of this game. Now episode 1 can finally fucking begin.